There we go. That's what we're looking for. Okay. So now we have to get into making sure that these photos are sourced, because otherwise that can cause copyright issues. So it's good to be in the habit now so that when you continue making your presentations, you won't get in trouble. Okay, so let's use um, this photo. What I'm doing first is actually trying to see if there's any that are under a government website, whether it's Prospect Park Alliance, City Parks, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like it's all newspapers, which is fine. Okay, so let's go here. So this is DNA info, and we will view full caption. Okay, great. So let's copy this. I'm going to paste it, take this out because I can't take that photo. Put that there. And then we're going to properly credit this photo. Now, crediting is very easy. It's not hard at all. All you're doing is just providing the source where you got the photo from. Um, so usually the website is enough to properly source the photo. Um, if you're not comfortable with that, just all you have to do is just do a Google search. How do you properly source photographs for educational use? Something like that. But usually, just posting the link of where you got it from is totally fine. And let's decrease the size. And then change this to white. And that's it. And now we've improved this slide. Okay. So I'm going to move on ahead because I don't want this video to take too long. But you see what the point I'm getting at, right? So for example, for nitrogen, you see how long this is. This is not necessary, and I you will lose points because your grade is basically based on your presentation, not only your presentation delivery, but also the quality of your slides themselves, because that's just as important. There are no long sentences. Do not use sentences. Use bullet points. Even if you don't use the bullet points themselves, have short phrases that help you to point out key things of what you're sharing. So don't do this. Okay, so let me just make sure to get on to right, these graphs. So I know I posted a lot of comments on all of your slides or all of your graphs that you submitted, which is great. It's good to do it now, get the pain over with, so you can learn exactly what I'm looking for. So let's take a look at this graph here. So some positives and negatives. Positives are that the axes are labeled, both the y and the x and the y here. We do have this names of the schools that are properly named. We do have a legend here. We also have your title here, which is good. And this is very brief, although I would edit this as well. And you probably don't even need this because you're the one who's explaining what's on the graph itself. The slide doesn't do that explanation. You do the explanation. Now, got the positives out of the way. What are the things that need to improve? So there's some things I can correct, some things I can't. I can't correct this graph because I don't have access to it. But I'll point out what needs to be corrected. But first, this one. All schools had between the optimal feed rate of 1 to 2 parts per million of phosphorus in the water. Be careful of spelling errors, punctuation, things like that. Phosphorus is not a proper noun. It's just a noun, so it doesn't need to be capitalized. 1. 2, optimal feed rate. That's not necessary. And really, this whole thing is not necessary. So actually, I would take this entire part out. Back and go. Next thing. Let's center this just visually because it makes it a lot easier for your audience to see. And I don't even know if I would name it this, but whatever, it's fine. Okay, so next thing. Again, please be careful of spelling errors. You have Erasmus Hall. Hall is not capitalized. That is the name of the school. Edward R. Murrow. That's fine. Midwood is spelled wrong. Please be careful of your spelling errors. ppm, M is not capitalized. It's just small case letters, ppm. And you don't have to say per orthophosphate. For one thing, the reason you don't have to say per orthophosphate is because it's not per orthophosphate. It's parts, otherwise you're saying parts per million per orthophosphate. So I would take that out. The next thing, we have our title, total amount of low range phosphate in schools. That's fine. I would probably be more specific and say in high schools, or even just remove high schools in general. That I probably can do because I can draw a shape. Here we go. And change the shape fill, change the shape outline. Now it's gone. Okay. So I would actually say total amount of low range phosphate. And even then, I'll just take out total amount of. Keep it simple. Okay. So now, low range phosphate. That is fine. Next thing. This graph. So a couple things. First, it is readable, so that's good. We know that Erasmus Hall is 1 parts per million. We know that Edward Murrow is 1.5. Midwood is also 1.5. Fantastic. Because for your projects, you are going to have more than 3 data points. You better have more than 3. And you do, because I've seen your projects. This first, the number of lines that are between, let's say, 0 to 0.5 are not going to be enough. You have to play with it and visually look at it and put yourself in the shoes of someone looking at your presentation. What makes it easy that within 5 seconds, your audience can read the graph and read it easily, right? So I can look at this in 5 seconds and tell this is 1, this is 1.5, this is 1.5. But if you have 50 bars going across, but you only have spacings just like this, that's going to make it very difficult for someone to really understand what's happening on your graph. So first, if you have a lot of bars in your bar graph, make sure you have the right number, a good number of your horizontal lines, so it makes it easy to read the graph. That's 1. 2, I share this on your graphs, but I'll say it here too. Make sure that your significant figures are consistent. So here we technically have 1, because 0 that's in front of the decimal point is not considered to be a significant figure. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 1. You want to make sure they're all at least 2. So 0.0, 0.50, 1.0, 1.5, 2.0. So there's that. And finally, it's up to you if you want to do a trend line. I would say do a trend line if you can, if you have a large number of bars, you're only measuring one parameter on your graph, so that's in this case phosphorus, and you want to see if it's increased over time, but you can't quite tell because the measurements are all over the place. So you put a trend line, and that'll average out for you to give you an equation of the line. Look at the slope, make sure you understand what that slope means. Think of it this way. If the slope is going up, that means the concentration is increasing over time. If it's going down, it's decreasing over time. And time. Make sure that you include the date of either in your graph itself. So maybe you've averaged out all of your sites, but you have a whole bunch of dates. Make sure those dates are listed on your x-axis or your y-axis, whichever makes more sense visually. Or if you are including all of the sites, make sure your date range is in your title. Again, you want it to be very quick and easy for your audience to see it. So that's your bar chart. Next thing, table. Ooh. Okay, so good things, not so great things. So the good thing is that the table is very, very easy to read. That's number one anyway. It's all labeled, has the measurements, which is great. And we do have a description here. You do not need this description because you have the table and you have you. You are the primary resource. These are your very visual note cards for yourself so you can deliver what you're going to say to the audience. So we're going to take this out, but it's not necessary. And then we will place this in the center. Okay, now what are some things to improve? So for one thing, your table is going to be much bigger than this, right? So what you want to do is, again, make sure that, make sure that your headings are labeled properly. P is not capitalized. P is lowercase, H is capitalized. Also make sure that, again, the significant figures, you need to have at least 2. So we'll add 2 right now. These are labeled, which is great. There's no spelling errors, which is even better. So one thing, you cannot tell a trend just looking at data on a table. That's why most of you are having problems trying to do that, and it's because you can't. It's very hard to find a pattern. However, a trick to finding a pattern that could be there is doing the conditional formatting that I showed you in the, I think it's part 3 of the videos of how to clean and then how to do initial analysis of your data. So format it so that the colors that you choose, you choose it however you want it to be. So let's say if you have dissolved oxygen, you might have it so that the reddest part of your chart would be where it is, let's say, so you could have it so that it's from 0 to 4, where it's like shades of red, and then, or 0 to 3, and then from 4 above, it's like shades of green or shades of blue, something like that. There you can actually see a trend because you're distinguishing the numbers by colors. That makes it quick and easy for your audience to see it. But if you don't do that, which you don't have to do, then you can't tell a trend. What you say is, this is a summary of the data that I used to graph. That's pretty much what you're showing. You're showing evidence that this is what you actually did.